Well, hello, friends. Welcome once again. This is a live Thursday edition of Syracuse Sports. You got Brent Axe here, and ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, football fans of all ages, it is my pleasure to introduce you to our brand new Syracuse.com football beat reporter. Javon Edmonds is here, everybody. How are you, sir?
That was a grand introduction, Brent. Thank you. I'm great. Always happy to hop on here with you and chop some ball. Radio and podcasting is where I got my start, so it always feels good to come back home.
I love to hear that. That's where I got my start too. A couple old radio guys just kind of doing the everything, pods, writing, a little bit of everything, digital,
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to have a lot on the tool belt these days. So we're going to talk to Javon, his early impressions of being on the beat for Syracuse football and being in Syracuse, New York, and a couple other things. Got some basketball thoughts for you today. Hey, we're talking the day after a win, which has been pretty rare lately for the Syracuse basketball team. A couple lacrosse notes and some great questions from our Syracuse sports insiders as well, who are always welcome to chime in. And being a Syracuse sports insider means you could text me directly anytime. Your thoughts, your questions, your opinions, things you want Javon and I to ask the coaches and players of Syracuse football. And it's so easy to sign up. It's right there on your screen. But join subtext.com/Syracuse Sports. And you can also text the word orange to 315-847-3895. Javon's a subscriber and has texted me a couple times, put some notes in the chat about things that are out there and on the text thread. And Javon will be certainly contributing to that going forward with spring practice just around the corner. It's knocking on the door, Javon. We're at the end of February, and spring ball will be here. And that's kind of what I wanted to open up with, because you're coming in after this gangbusters 10-win Fran Brown debut season for Syracuse football. I felt it last year that there was an intense interest in spring ball, right? And a lot of it was new coach, new coordinators. We actually had the opportunity to talk to the assistant coaches, which we had not done in the previous administration. There was so much intrigue, and I feel like that's going to be the case again. So how does it feel to kind of hit the ground running with a program that people are really interested in, even in spring? And, everybody's feeling good about football. There's some other programs that are, trying to get back on track here at Syracuse, but football is the one where everybody's feeling good about right now.
Yeah, no, I think the spring is where you really learn about a football program from the standpoint of you see who has the upper hand on the depth chart heading into fall camp, but you also see where the team has deficiencies, and that's really what the coaching staffs are looking for in this era, because you've got the spring transfer portal afterward. So it's, let's see what we're good at, let's see where we need to plug and play the last couple of missing pieces to the puzzle. Talk to whatever booster you need to and get the NIL deal squared away to get whoever you need in here at the end of the spring window. Granted, you normally don't get any home run hitters in the spring portal, but the springtime is the best time to get, to delve into the program. So I'm excited. Big season coming up with 11 potential All-Americans on the schedule, 4 playoff teams from last season. You've got Miami on the schedule. So this is going to be, year one was big. Year two is also going to be big.
Yeah, how about that, Javon? You come in, and this is the best road trip year I've ever seen for Syracuse football. Let's see.
Yes.
We got Atlanta twice, which is a great city to go to, and including that opening matchup with Tennessee. I'm going in no particular order here, just off the top of my head. Dallas for SMU, nice spot. South Bend, college football history. You mentioned Miami, who's on the schedule again this year, this time at Miami. I mean,
and Death Valley, Clemson.
And there you go, Death Valley. So don't get spoiled here. This doesn't happen every year. It's just how the schedule worked out. But man, yeah, what a year to walk into. So, and by the way, I don't go on the road a lot, but let's just say you're going to have a road trip buddy this year. I'm going to be asking to, hey, Brent's going to be coming on some trips this year. So
hey, come on, pack your bags.
Let's go. I'm in. So, but you just spoke to it too. The 11 All-Americans, those places they're visiting and those teams that they're facing. Javon, this is like, we'll get into some spring training. I said spring training like it's baseball, some spring football storylines here that you're looking forward to covering, but that schedule, it just all comes back to that schedule, which is just what a wall that is for Syracuse to climb. No matter who comes and goes and the natural attrition of football and just things that happen, right? Not all of those teams are going to be as good as they were last year. We know all this, right? But man, the name brands and the road trips in particular they have to take. This is one of the toughest schedules I've ever seen for Syracuse football, let alone road slates I've ever seen.
Yeah, one thing our readers, listeners, subscribers, and every other word you want to use to describe our consumers of our media will learn about me. I'm not a sugarcoater, but this season, if 10 wins isn't a thing again, I will completely understand. I won't call it a sophomore slump for Fran Brown, Jeff Nixon, and this staff, because all of those guys who made the offense last season are gone. The nation's leading passer is gone. LaQuint Allen, I've talked to some folks in the scouting world. They describe him as a guy who's going to make a name for himself in the NFL as a third down back. And he was one of the most versatile guys in the ACC last year. He's gone. Aronde Gadsden, he's the tight end that the Mike McDaniels and Sean McVays and Kevin O'Connells and Kevin Stefanskis of the world are looking for, where he's really a big slot receiver that you can put in on a mismatch down. He's gone. Jackson Meeks, who, first of all, I don't know how you invite 48 receivers to the combine.
And he's not one.
Jackson Meeks isn't one of them. That is crazy to me. But he's gone. So that's a lot of production that you have to make up for. I feel like in basketball, we always emphasize, this team lost 75% of their scoring to the draft or the portal. Boom, boom, boom. We've got to start making that more of an emphasis in football too. Like that, a lot of that offensive production is gone. So now you got to replenish and use some younger guys against a schedule that's just way more difficult than last season's. Now, the Miami game from last year should be some encouragement, because that was a Hurricanes team with a lot to play for and one of the best offenses in the country. So the coaching staff showed it can coach up to that level. It's just, is this new crop of guys going to be as good as last year's guys and do it for a full 12 weeks? Because there's not many sleeper games on this schedule. UConn and Colgate are the only two that just pop completely to your brain as far as guaranteed wins. After that, you got to bring your lunch every week.
And even UConn went to a bowl game last year. Every team they played except Colgate went to a bowl game. So even UConn, Jim Mora's doing a nice job there. I would agree with you. I think you got to slot that in the got to win category for Syracuse, but they're a challenge in and of itself there. And you brought up all those names, some of which are at the combine this week. Meeks not being there is wild. I think you could make the case that Justin Barron could be there, and I think you could make the case Marlowe Wax could be there. They got to cut it off at some point here, but spring practice is going to be interesting, but it's going to continue after that, because we're going to be tracking a number of guys, Javon, that this could be certainly the busiest we have seen Syracuse pop on the screen. We've got the scroll at the bottom of our screen here. You're going to see a lot of Syracuse guys on that scroll over the, I would say, day 2 and day 3. I don't think you're going to see any day 1 guys, but day 2 and day 3, stay sharp, because you're going to see some Syracuse guys popping up there. So as you've started to look at that, and you mentioned you've talked to some scouts about LaQuint Allen and some other people, man, Kyle McCord's getting some buzz out there. And I'm at the point now, and I wonder if you agree, I wouldn't be surprised he goes day 2. Just by the virtue of the importance of the quarterback position, the names that are kind of going to slot off the board on day 1. Remember, day 2 is rounds 2 and 3. So I'm putting both of those rounds in that category. I would not be surprised if you made it to the second round at this point. It just feels like there's a lot of good buzz out there about Kyle McCord. What are you hearing about that?
So who is QB3 seems to be the question of this draft, more so than if quarterback goes number 1, which is very, very rare. And it just depends on who you talk to. Some people love Tyler Shuff from Louisville. Some people love Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. Some people love Kyle McCord. Fran Brown, we know how he feels about Kyle. Thinks he's better than all of those guys. Right. His words. Yeah. He went out and beat Cam Ward. Had a better record than Shedeur Sanders. Way better bowl game performance than Shedeur Sanders. Got further along in the season than a Tyler Shuff. You know, you can say Jackson Dart's Ole Miss team underperformed while Kyle McCord's Syracuse team overperformed. I can just say this: a guy who only had 6 interceptions while leading the country in yards. Not 6. I'm sorry, 12 interceptions, and 5 of them came in one game.
And
that
one
was
game,
against
yeah.
Pittsburgh, which was that game. Whew, I've got a friend that's a Syracuse fan. He called me the next day, like, man, that was a rough one to watch, you know. But so half of his picks came in the one game. So you put Pittsburgh aside, you lead the country in yards with just 7 interceptions across those other 11 games. You don't need much film to know that's pretty darn good. But then you turn on the film, there weren't many throws that Kyle McCord missed last season.
Right.
And his processing is there. You know, if you want to say his arm talent isn't elite, that's fine. But when it comes to NFL quarterbacks, can you play on time, on schedule, and on target? He checks that box. So, yeah, like you said, if he goes second round, I won't be surprised. I would say from this standpoint here of teams want to talk themselves into a quarterback, like if he winds up being one of those Lamar Jackson to the Ravens situations where team trades out of 32 to move up and get a guy they think they don't want to wait on in the second round, I wouldn't be shocked if he slots into that spot. That's just how we've seen things play out recently. I think McCord's going to have a chance to compete for a starting spot in training camp. So he's going to be something to look out for, absolutely.
No question about it. And OG was out there today doing some media and said he's the best quarterback in the draft. You know, a bit of a biased slanted view there, I would say, but gave some good reasoning to that and how Allen develops and just all those guys that are in the draft. But that means that those positions have to be filled. And look, Javon, for a new writer coming in and covering a team, what's better than a quarterback competition, especially starting in spring? I think if you're asking me right now here on February 27th, like you don't go out and target somebody from LSU and give them a significant NIL payment and they don't by default end up being, I think, the favorite to be the starter. I think Ricky Collins Jr. right now, you give him a slight edge. You give him a slight edge over a returning player in Michael Johnson Jr., a slight edge certainly over Luke Carney, who's a freshman, who I've heard a lot of good things about and won 4 state titles in Texas and can scramble and threw for over 10,000 yards and just has a lot of qualifications that raise your eyebrows to say, I've got to keep an eye on that player for sure. But he's a freshman, right? So Collins has the edge, but from what we've heard from Fran Brown, and I wonder what you think, and you're going to have a story coming up about Jeff Nixon for people to keep an eye on here shortly. Jeff Nixon goes from Kyle McCord, the leading passer in the country last year, and everything we just talked about with the NFL qualifications, to whoever wins the job. You now have to shift that offense around the skill set of whoever wins the job, which I think right now the edge is Collins, but I'm fascinated by that and how Jeff Nixon is going to apply it to whoever wins the job.
Yeah, absolutely. Jeff likes what he's seen from all of his guys in the winter workouts. Granted, there's not much to take away from winter workouts in the weight room and just throwing you're throwing at somebody who isn't being covered. You're just getting your timing down and your chemistry with your receivers. Here's why I would say Ricky Collins also has an edge. When the whole Kyle McCord NCAA waiver situation came up, the first person I thought of was Ricky Collins from the standpoint of if he was going to sit behind somebody again, he could have just stayed down in Baton Rouge and sat behind Garrett Nussmeier again. The reason he transferred was because Nussmeier was coming back and he didn't want to sit again. He wanted to go play somewhere. So, I'm pretty sure Ricky Collins was saying his prayers for Kyle McCord to not get a waiver or just decide to go to the draft. And I know he's very happy that Fran Brown told Kyle, go to the league. So from that standpoint alone, it's like Ricky, had McCord come back, I'm pretty sure Ricky Collins would be a name we were talking about in the spring window of the portal. I think that's just how it works these days. So from that standpoint alone, I think Ricky has the edge. You paid him, and he came here because he wants to play. If he's not going to play, it's just not going to be a pretty situation. So from that alone, I think he has the edge. And he was very highly touted down there in Baton Rouge. Now, granted, it's not like the SEC gets to write on quarterbacks all the time. You know, I'm a
Right.
Temple grad. My first few years were spent covering DeJuan Mathis, a former Georgia guy, and he wound up being a receiver that got moved down to the FCS level by the time our college days were done. So they don't always get it right with quarterback down there, although every other position is hard for them to miss on. But Collins is one of the ones that it's supposed to be a surefire thing. And if there's any staff that's going to test that out, it's this one.
Javon, from what, and it's all film and it's all talking to people, and he doesn't have a ton of reps at LSU. It's not like McCord, who had a lot of film, and you can really look at it and break it down and know what kind of quarterback he is. But in starting to look at it, what is your early kind of Mel Kiper Jr. breakdown of Ricky Collins and what kind of quarterback Syracuse will have if, in fact, he wins the job?
He may not be the passer that Kyle McCord is. He's more athletic than Kyle McCord. And I will say LSU in this recent span of quarterbacks they've had, they're not bringing you in to be the next face of their program if you're not a more than capable passer. You brought in Jaden Daniels. You've got Nussmeier. We all know what Joe Burrow was down there. These days, LSU is a quarterback factory. So for you to even get the opportunity down there means you have something to you. That means a lot to me. So you combine that with the athleticism and how high-powered this offense was last season, there's potential for Ricky Collins to, get his name out there and some people to take notice of him by at least week 6 when he gets his legs under him and he's really starting to become comfortable with the offense. About halfway through the season, there could be some people talking about Ricky Collins. Is he going to be in the conversation for all conference this year? I don't think so. His first year as a starter, he's a young guy. But I do think this will be one of those multi-year guys at Syracuse that fans will be like, he did good in his tenure for us.
Javon, you had the chance to sit down with Fran Brown this week and kind of meet him and get to know him. And where I don't want to give away everything. We'll read the story when it comes out, but get some good nuggets for a story you're working on as well. But what were your first impressions of getting down and to sit down with Coach Brown?
Yeah, so me and Fran were in Philly for 1 year together in 2019. Fran Brown has been passed over a lot for guys he should not have been passed over. I would say that. And he carries that chip on his shoulder. That was a good part of our introducing ourselves, getting to know each other part of that conversation. He is everything you hear about him as a real Camden, New Jersey guy. That is Fran. And we speak the same language. Him being from Camden and me being from Baltimore, we speak the same language. So, the culture up here will always be strong under him. It will always be work for everything you have. And he is excited about this season, man. Those practice shirts that you put in the text line, the 4th and 1 and 4th and 9s. That's not just the defense wearing those. That's the whole team. We as a team were not good enough last season. It's his message. We're not satisfied with 10 wins. It's his message. You wouldn't hear that from most coaches after one season at, let's call it what it is, a basketball school in a basketball conference doing what they did on the gridiron last year. Nothing negative I could take away from that conversation. Spring ball will be interesting. The spirit of competition will be flowing. The coaching staff is going to be something. It's going to be a big part of his off seasons while he's in Syracuse. Nixon had a lot of interest, interviewed for the Texans job. Some teams in college wanted him as OC. Some, like Temple, were interested in him as a head coach, him and Elijah Robinson. You mentioned Campanile interviewing for the Eagles job earlier.
Yeah, the quarterback
position. Coach. And I was in the office on Tuesday, and he said, there's some NFL teams interviewing a few of our guys. So staff turnover is going to be a thing. And he takes pride in that. And I'll talk about that a little bit in the story, but he feels like it's his responsibility to get his guys jobs of their own and to teach them if they want to be head coaches. He thinks it's his job to teach them what comes with being a head coach. He says Kirby Smart was the only person that did that for him, and he wants to do that for all of his guys.
Yeah, by the way, on the spot reporting, I was over at the facility today. I was actually there for a lacrosse media availability and saw Coach Campanelli walk by. So hasn't taken the job yet. If he's going to get the job, he's still here at Syracuse. So on-site reporting there for you. But you said it. When you have an offense that leads the country in passing yards, you're going to get some interest. Jeff Nixon has some prior NFL experience. Nunzio's brother is now the defensive coordinator for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yep. Like, when you have that kind of a boom season, particularly on one side of the ball, you're going to get interest from people. And I remember Fran saying that when he walked in here, that I'm going to bring in coaches that are going to get interest from people, that I want to develop into head coaches, that I want to go on to the NFL. And that's it. What I think Fran has stressed to these guys is just don't take another job. Now, it's interesting because Ross Douglas did do that. The wide receiver coach took pretty much the same position at Oregon, which pays a little more than Syracuse, which shows you the challenge that's still there. As much as Fran came in and just turned this thing upside down, yeah, John Wildhack recently announced the $50 million fundraising campaign, and they're going to get the house settlement money, but this is still a program that needs money, that needs big donors, that needs people to buy in quite literally into this thing, and you're going to lose talent, not just to the NFL, but to Oregon and to bigger name schools that notice what you did. Hey, if you can do that at Syracuse, we're going to swipe in and try and get you to do it here, as Oregon did with Douglas. So that's going to be interesting to follow. Another interesting thing to follow, Javon, is, and you've been tracking this, and I've been sending it to our Syracuse Sports Insiders. One thing that really blew me away last spring, there was one day, it was a Saturday, and Emily and I laugh about this. Our old friend Emily Liker, who's now at the NFL Combine, by the way, covering the Minnesota Vikings for the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. But so there was one day when it was a visit day, and they're holding the door open to the indoor practice facility, and it didn't close for like 10 minutes. It was just a stream of recruits and their families coming in. And I've never seen more people at a spring practice, and it adds to the buzz. Those practices are intense enough. As you said, the competition level, and Fran is mic'd up at these practices, and it's go, go, go. It's intense. But to have that many people, and they practice both indoors and outdoors, so it's kind of a split, but it adds to the vibes of the practice. So what we've been seeing is a number of four-star guys that are on the list with, name any big name program you want, it seems, guys that are committed to Florida State but will visit to Syracuse, and these high-level recruits that were not coming here before Fran Brown arrived. It feels like that's going to be the vibe again, not only at spring ball, but in slotting some official visits for late May and June when it's that time of the year. Syracuse is in on a lot of these guys and is looking to strike big again in the class of 2026.
So I'll say this about that. Temple has the most group of 5 players in the National Football League, and that is all thanks to the Fran Brown era down there. Fran Brown was a hot commodity for Matt Rule to bring to Baylor and for Kirby Smart to get to Georgia for that reason alone. Fran Brown is a relentless recruiter. He will do anything within the realms of legality to make sure you understand he wants you at his program. And he has connections all throughout the country. We've seen Pennsylvania guys, I think about 3 of them, coming up for visit soon. A lot of Florida kids, a lot of Georgia kids. He is heavily connected in the hotbeds. And like you said, like when you see these guys posting their graphics that they paid Joe Tipton and On3 to do for them, there's Power 5s on that graphic. In college football, blue bloods, new bloods, royalty, just programs that are known for their football on those graphics with Syracuse. He's letting these kids know, you come here, they're going to get developed. They're going to have a chance to play. You know, we know schools like Florida State, Alabama, Georgia, USC, Oregon, they'll get you knowing you're going to Porter out in a year or two because they're never going to use you. But you're going to boost their recruiting class, which is going to be good for their preseason standings and all of the politics of college football. That's not the case. Fran Brown recruits for guys to eventually play for him. I can tell you that firsthand. And that's going to go a long way because kids, at the end of the day, they just want to play. They want to get on the field. So expect a whole lot more of 4 stars announcing they're taking some trips to Central New York, even from the Sunshine State up here to where it snowed every day for my first 2 weeks, except for one.
Yeah, we welcomed you with a traditional Syracuse winter. Emily got off easy. The past few winters have been nothing around here. This has been a true Syracuse winter, so we just had to break you in with that, Javon. We just had to initiate you with, this is what it's really like around here for winter. That's what I want to ask you. So tell us, for those that don't know, where you came from and what you were doing before you joined us here at Syracuse.com. You mentioned you're from Baltimore, and just anything you want people to know about you.
Yeah, Baltimore, born and raised, played basketball and baseball growing up. My brother played football, Division II level at Shawan down in North Carolina. That's a drive I never took. I'm glad I never took the drive. Every time my mom came back home describing that 6-hour ride, it's like, yeah, you had fun. I've taken the ride to Carolina for a Temple and Duke game. It was Mike Elko's first game as a head coach. It's not a drive I care to take again. So, yeah, I've been around sports my whole life. Like I said, went to Temple for 4 years. Was there for friends last season up there, where the whole Manny Diaz was coach for probably 2 weeks before going down to Miami, and Friend got passed over for Rod Carey of Northern Illinois. I know a lot of people that wish they had that decision back. It's free time. I cook, watch sports, play sports, video games. I need to get back to actually going out and playing basketball on a routine. I feel bad for how my legs and my chest are going to feel when I do get back on the court. I've been at this reporting thing since 2020. Started off covering Temple in the American Athletic Conference for Rivals in the Philadelphia Inquirer. After that, I was at The Messenger, the failed attempt by billionaire Jimmy what was Jimmy's last name? Jimmy Finkelstein. Worked with Seth Davis and Jeff Goodman over there, the college basketball megastars, if you will. We lasted for 8 months before Jimmy went broke and shut down the company. So yeah, that was that. I was a free agent for a long time after that, and now I'm here.
Before you kind of got involved in this job and we brought you here to Syracuse, when somebody mentioned Syracuse, New York, like, what was the thing that came to mind for you?
Carmelo Anthony. That's hometown biased.
I was going to say, right in your backyard. Yeah.
Yeah. So Syracuse basketball, it's a funny story, is actually what got me into college hoops. So 5th grade, Overlook Elementary in Glen Burnie, Maryland. Miss Catherine Hebel's 5th grade class. We had a thing going on around the school where every class had a team in the tournament that they were going to root for. And our class got blessed with Syracuse. This is the 2012 tournament. So I want to say this is the Tyler Ennis and Fad Mello era of Syracuse. Michael Carter Williams and all those guys. So this is that era. And I fell in love with college basketball ever since. So that was my introduction to Syracuse. Football started getting on the map when I was in middle or high school, and you start to really know some guys that are actually good at football and are getting recruited. And Syracuse actually had a good little imprint on Maryland. They actually recruited some guys from that area right
for
now.
Sure. Yeah.
Play some dudes from Harford County, actually, which is where Tashawn Frog, graduate assistant, is from. So they're recruiting his backyard. So it's always been known as a basketball school to us. I can't describe the feeling the first time I drove up to the facility and I saw the Carmelo K. Anthony Center, because it's like, wow, like somebody from where I'm from really put on for our city and is heading to the Hall of Fame later this year and has the basketball facility named after him at a school that is college basketball royalty. So that was like a great thing to see. But it's always been known as a hoop school to us, but now it's like, this football team is something serious, and they peaked on the radar. Had I not gone to Temple, I probably would not have paid as much attention to Syracuse last year. But, those guys, a lot of the guys came from down in Philly with us back there. So we had a lot of familiarity with the staff. So I'm like, hold on, this might be something. I'm interested, and turn on the TV, and it was entertaining football. Of the 3 losses, 2 of them were by 1 possession. Like we mentioned the Pitt game earlier.
The T-shirts, yeah.
So it was a ride to watch the team last year. You're looking like, oh my, no, they've got some NFL guys on the roster.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a very interesting next few years up here for however long Frank Brown is in orange.
Well,
that's just the description.
Just to go back to Carmelo for a minute, the fact that his kid is now coming here to play basketball it's wild. I remember 2003 like it was yesterday. Now you got Kiyan Anthony coming here, and this gray spot in my head just grew about 10 more gray hairs just saying that. So that's wild. And sorry that we did not greet you with the traditional Syracuse basketball, but hopefully with the arrival of Kiyan and Sadiq White and whatever they do in the portal, basketball will get back to what it truly is and what you remember it from your 5th grade class and rooting for Syracuse back in the day. Javon, I can't wait to work with you. Can't wait to be at practice with you and read your stuff. And everybody should follow you on social media, of course, and read your work on Syracuse.com. As you mentioned, you're working on a story that's going to be out soon about Jeff Nixon, and it's just all going to flow from there. We're going to have plenty of pods during spring practice, and we're going to be diving right into it. But again, welcome. We're so glad you're part of the team and can't wait to work with you. And I know our readers and our subscribers and our texters are getting ready to get to know you and looking forward to what you're going to be doing for us here covering football.
I'm excited to feed everyone the content that they are hungry for.
There you go. Thanks, Javon. We'll talk to you next time, my friend.
Thanks, Brent.
There he goes, folks. That is our new Syracuse football beat reporter, the one and only Javon Edmonds. So, yeah, follow him on social media and everywhere, and you're going to be seeing him soon. He's been digging in, and once he got used to the snow and everything about what it is to move to Syracuse, New York, came right into a true Syracuse winter where I don't think it stopped snowing from the minute he got here till like today, where it's actually raining in central New York. So welcome, Javon, and we're certainly looking forward to reading your stuff all about Syracuse football, and you'll be on the text line and just it'll be jumping right into the pool here with everything going on. It's going to get super busy on the football front here before you know it. A couple other things before we wrap up today's Thursday edition of the Live Pod. Certainly want to talk a little hoops here. We did that on the Syracuse basketball postgame show following Syracuse's win over NC State. But look, they are closer to the ACC tournament. They are not locked into the ACC tournament. But that was my big takeaway, was the almost sense of relief that as bad as the season has been, as much as people just want to look at the beacon over the hill and focus on rebuilding, focus on the portal, focus on what next year's going to be. We're just talking about it, of course, with Kiyan Anthony coming in and Sadiq White and Luke Fennell and Aaron Womack. Those are the recruits and whoever they target in the portal and the pressure that's on general manager Alex Klein to rebuild this thing. Whether you feel Adrian Autry should return as the head coach or not, like that's what people are preoccupied with. But there's still just that much left of the season. You got to play out the games and just I'm glad in a way, right? For the fans' sake. And it's been one thing after the other. And had they lost to NC State and given NC State that tiebreaker and had it just continued to slide down the hill, like, whew, man, just fans are fired up, and you should be, and you have every right to be, and that's what we're here for. That's what our Syracuse sports insiders need to vent about. And that's what fans need to talk about and vent about. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but it's just been, I don't want to say toxic. That's not the right word, but man, the conversation around Syracuse basketball has just been so much, right? Now, there was only 7,000 people at that game last night, and that needs to be talked about more because Syracuse everybody fudges the numbers a little bit and bumps things up. But to put 19,000 people in the box score last night, if you were there, you're like, what, did they count everybody twice? Did they count everybody within a 5-mile radius? But it's just, what's the expression when things aren't going well? We can't have nice things. Syracuse had a nice thing last night. They led from start to finish. Now, NC State certainly contributed to this with the way they shot the ball, the way they were just non-existent in the paint. Syracuse rarely got a double team. Jair Davis, great in the paint. Certainly Eddie Lampkin was great again. What was that? His 12th double-double, 14 points, 15 rebounds. Syracuse took what I guess you could say NC State didn't give them, but also took what they did give them, which was poor defense, which was a lot of misses that Syracuse went the other way and scored. And it's like, okay, at the very least, they're going to have that. Okay, now it's not over. There's 3 games to go. You got Virginia Tech on Saturday, SMU, both of those on the road, and then Syracuse will come home next Saturday, March 8th, to finish out the regular season against Virginia. No matter how far they go in the ACC tournament. And look, this is the guy who a week ago I tweeted after the Pitt game. Trust me, there was a little sarcasm in this, but there's always truth in those things as well. Even if you get the ACC tournament bid, just turn it down, which I know some people were not thrilled with, particularly close to the Syracuse coaching staff, and I'll leave it at that. And we worked it out. But that's how people feel about this, right? But you don't want that scarlet letter. 3 teams are going to get left out of the ACC tournament. And I don't care if they go to Charlotte, play whatever the first game is, probably like a noon matchup, and come home. That's better than not being there. That is better than not being there. As bad as this season has been, they're going to finish under 500, and all those things that we mentioned are more interesting. I am far more interested in how this team rebuilds. And look, they're bringing Autry back. That's just my opinion. I have no inside info on that. I'd be stunned if John Wildhack moved on. Whether you think that's the right move or not, I certainly respect your opinion on that. But they're going to give him another year to turn this thing around and invest and let Alex Klein do his thing. And like, that's happening. Okay. That's my somewhat informed opinion there. And that you always got to leave a window open in sports that something wild could happen. But at this point, like, he's coming back for year 3. I am much more interested in that. They've become like a pro team, like any other college basketball program that's investing in NIL and general managers and support staff. And Mike Waters and I talked about this on a pod earlier this week that I hope you guys can check out. It feels like pro sports because it is. Like the element, I was listening to a great interview today with Jay Billis. The element of college and college basketball is completely gone, right? So whether you bemoan that or you just kind of accept that's the way the waves have gone, at the very least, Syracuse, it appears, is on track for, not over yet, will not wear that scarlet letter of being left out of the ACC tournament. But let's let this play out and see if they clinch that. And it was nice just to have a easygoing game, right? No, now, NC State got to within 8, and you're like, oh, come on, no way. You cannot do this again. You cannot blow, in that case, what would be an 18-point lead. JJ responded. We mentioned how good Eddie was. It's like, so even just a temporary, it's like, perfect example. Javon and I were talking about it. There was about 2 weeks here in Syracuse where it did not stop snowing. It just did not stop, especially for our friends that are in those lake effect snow belts in Oswego County and Lewis County. And I'm here in Syracuse, so north of Syracuse. It did not stop snowing, right? So when that day comes, when it finally stops and you have a break to be like, okay, can I find my driveway? Can I get some snow off the roof? And then the sun breaks through and you're like, oh, what is this? Right? That was last night for Syracuse basketball fans that have just been so frustrated and have every right to be about what they've seen. They won a game. They won 74-60. They took care of business. They had a bad team on the other floor. They didn't find a way to lose. Let's just put it that way. This team has found ways to lose. I think Autry was trying to talk himself into something last night, frankly, at his press conference. Like, when you go through the games, we were in control out of those games. No, you blew it in a lot of those games. You played terrible defense in the second half, and that's what bad teams do. It's what poorly coached teams do. Like, this is not a case of like, man, we were right there. No, you blew it, right? But not last night. You did not find a way to lose. So I think you got to be breathing a sigh of relief if you're a Syracuse basketball fan. At the very least, there's been a shortage of that lately, so we'll see if that continues into Virginia Tech when it will be March. You can see John Rothstein counting that down. It is March on social media. Okay, a couple more things before we go. I wanted to answer some questions from our Syracuse sports insiders while we're on the basketball front here. Mark B. says, Brent, do you see an ACC Big East merger or shared scheduling agreement as the better play? So there was a story this week. Mike Krzyzewski was talking to Rick Pitino and they've brought that up. Both Pitino and Coach K have advocated that the ACC and the Big East merge. Val Ackerman, who is the commissioner of the Big East, who was formerly the commissioner of the WNBA, has had a couple other high-profile gigs, was asked about this. John Oran, who is a terrific sports business reporter for Puck, used to be with Sports Business Journal, brought that up to her, and she was intrigued by the idea. She said, if people on the level of Mike Krzyzewski and Rick Pitino bring it up, it's my job to listen to it. This was something I was talking about back when Syracuse played Georgetown, that instead of just playing Georgetown every year, what they need to do is have a mini reunion every year at the Garden. And think of how big St. John's is now. Top 10 team. Pitino has completely turned that thing around. New York is going crazy again for college. But the Knicks are good too. But when St. John's is good, it brings just a certain energy to New York City and the Garden again that, it's like coming to America. Remember they go to the St. John's game, right? That's when St. John's was cool. Chris Mullin. And you can go through the names, Louis Carnesecca, right? The sweaters. So I was talking about this back when Syracuse played Georgetown. Instead of just playing Georgetown every year, I feel like they should do a mini tournament where Syracuse plays Georgetown and St. John's and Villanova and Providence and whoever you want to schedule. Certainly Connecticut. They're having a down year by their standards, but still one of the powerhouse names in college basketball. So do I want to see the two leagues merge and make a super conference in college basketball? I don't hate the idea. Now, you'd really have to work out some things in terms of media rights deals, right? We know where the money comes from there. It comes from football. But if they can merge and form a power conference, the SEC took your bag. Big Ten took your bag, right? The ACC is the fourth or fifth best conference in college basketball. Now, why? Because they have money. If the ACC and the Big East do merge, that does create a valuable media property that between what's out there now, and again, you'd have to figure out the media contracts, but you're telling me ESPN wouldn't want to show that, or a Netflix or an Amazon or TNT, whoever wouldn't buy that if those leagues merged. Now, again, there's a lot you'd have to work out here, but we are in that era in college sports. Everybody thinks a lot of these programs are going to break away and kind of form their own thing away from the NCAA anyway. And in a world where football rules the roost, what's holding that together? Basketball. The only reason that the SEC, the Big Ten, ACC, Big 12, whoever else you want to throw in there, and remember, a whole league died before our very eyes in the Pac-12. The only reason that hasn't happened is the NCAA tournament. Basketball. Basketball is actually the thing holding this together in a world where football rules the roost. So, Mark, I am intrigued by the idea. I don't know if I'd want to see a full merger, but at the very least, can they cross over and play more? Because people yearn for those matchups and want to see that. And we'll close with this. My guy Randy H. says, hey, Brent, how concerned are you with the men's lacrosse team at this time? And where are your biggest areas of concern? By the way, it just came out about an hour ago. Unfortunate news for Syracuse lacrosse. Jackson Birtwistle's out for the year. He suffered a leg injury against Harvard. That's a hit to their depth at midfield. He's got one of the hardest shots on the team. Veteran player, redshirt senior, who's been great on the man up, and they're going to miss him. Luke Roa and Billy Dwan, by the way, for you Lax fans wondering, they're day-to-day, but will travel to Utah. So Syracuse is now 3-2, and they're going to Salt Lake City, of all places, on March 1st, on Saturday, to play a lacrosse game, which still intrigues me that Syracuse is going to go 2 time zones away here at this juncture of the season. But that's how it worked out. Use it for recruiting purposes. Use it as best as you can. But they've lost 2 in a row. Syracuse lost to Maryland. It's an acceptable loss. Maryland's a good team. They've got one of the best goalies in the country. They've got Syracuse's number, frankly, as they beat them 7 times in a row. It was a crappy weather day. So, hey, whatever. And then they lost to Harvard at home when they won the face-off category 28-4. I'm still bewildered by that you can win 28 of 32 face-offs and lose the game. The reason they did is they turned the ball over a bunch and they played poor defense. And so let me put it back on the screen here for your question. Where are my concerns? Okay, I have a couple concerns. One, lacrosse can't dodge the attack in particular. They can't beat their defenders one-on-one. Teams know this, and what they're doing is Harvard did it, and you're going to see other teams do it. They're packing the middle, and they're making Owen Hiltz and Joey Spallina and Finn Thompson and to an extent Trey Deer and whoever else kind of cycles in an attack, to take shots from 10, 12, 13 yards away. Can they hit those shots sometimes? Sure. Do I want those guys taking those shots from that distance that much? No, they're better on the crease. They're better when they can set picks and get open 2-3 yards from the net, not 10 to 12. So that is a big concern of mine. I'm not sure about Jimmy McCool. Jimmy McCool, Syracuse's goaltender, was great against Maryland. He was not so good against Harvard. But part of the reason he wasn't so good against Harvard was all the open shots that Harvard got on him. Will they cure that at Utah this week? I think the defense actually has to slide less and basically make offensive players beat them one-on-one more. So we'll see if they do that. So those are two big concerns for me. Can the attack win more one-on-one matchups? Is the goalie situation, I don't know. Jimmy McCool's only started a few games, and Michael Ippoliti came in for him. So if he struggles again, he's going to be looking at the sideline like, am I coming out again? So we have to see how that plays out. And really, the other thing is how much Syracuse struggles in the second half. Cornell game last year. North Carolina, who they beat, but almost blew it in the second half. Denver scores 3 goals on you in the third, 6 goals, in the third period in the tournament. Vermont outscored you in the fourth quarter this year. Maryland shut you down in the second half, and Harvard did the same thing. Why does this team struggle so much in the second half? That's adjustments or lack thereof that Pat March and John O'Derna, Syracuse's offensive and defensive coordinators, need to make, and certainly falls on the head coach as well. So in a nutshell, Randy, those are my concerns, and now you've lost 2 in a row, and you have to go to Salt Lake City, 2 time zones away in elevation. Now, Salt Lake's not as bad as some other places out west, but it's still elevation that you're not used to, playing at noon Mountain Time on Saturday. So Syracuse can gut that one out, get a win, come home with a week off before they play Hopkins next Sunday, then all is well. But there's a big gap between 4-2 if they beat Utah and 3-3 if they lose. So there you go. Good questions from you guys. Good thoughts as always. It's right there on your screen. We'd love for you to become a Syracuse Sports Insider, be a part of the conversation on this pod, on our Syracuse basketball postgame shows, which, by the way, programming note, there is no Syracuse basketball postgame after Virginia Tech on Saturday. Speaking of lacrosse, so Syracuse, Virginia Tech is at noon. The lacrosse game's at 2. I'm on lacrosse duty Saturday, so I'm going to be going right from watching the hoops game into covering lacrosse. So there is no Syracuse basketball postgame Saturday night for those of you that watch that show. Much appreciated if you do. Make sure you subscribe. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Syracuse Sports, so you know when a live episode pops up, or you can always listen and watch on demand when you want. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Thanks to Javon Edmonds for joining us, and welcome once again to Javon to the Syracuse.com team. My name's Brent Axe. We'll be back with another live pod next Thursday and a couple other pods on the way. Our Syracuse Sports Insiders know we're working on the ever-popular Axe Brent Anything pod, where you can ask me anything you want. So send your questions in, and that pod will be coming soon, and some other fun things we got working for you that we're looking forward to you seeing and listening to very soon. But thanks for hanging with us today. We'll be back on another episode of Syracuse Sports Live. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll talk